Hello, everyone, and welcome to Public Schools Week 2024. And welcome to today's webinar about current challenges and how schools are responding. My name is Jill Cook, and I'm the Executive Director of the American School Counselor Association and the current chair of the Learning First Alliance. We know that families, educators, community members all understand the very pivotal role that public schools play in enriching their communities and the lives of children and students. Fostering excellence and equity in K-12 public education not only promotes student achievement and success, it is essential to our nation's global competitiveness and our democratic way of life. And our public schools are facing challenges today, including state budget cuts, post-pandemic recovery issues, and educator shortages. And we cannot afford to let our students be negatively impacted by this. And that's what brings us together today, to hear and learn from some amazing educators and leaders across the country who will share about what is working during these challenging times. But before we jump in, though, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce a video message from a leader who champions the cause of education with unwavering dedication. Let's watch together as U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona shares his inspiring vision for the future of public schools and celebrates with us the vital role that public education in shaping the lives of our nation's youth.
Hi, I'm Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona, and here at the U.S. Department of Education, we are public school proud. Happy National Public Schools Week. Huge thanks to the Learning First Alliance and all of our teachers and school leaders across the country for your work on behalf of students. I'll always fight for public education because I'm a proud product of public schools. Where I grew up in Meriden, Connecticut, I had a remarkable public school experience. I had teachers who helped me see my potential. There was Mr. O'Neill, my second grade teacher, who, my first teacher of color, he inspired me to be my best. Later, my high school art teacher, Mrs. Ransom, she first planted the seed in me that I could become an educator. I wouldn't be where I am today without the public schools and the outstanding educators who helped me believe anything was possible, even when I didn't see that potential in myself. Such power in our public schools. Power that not only opens doors to opportunities for individual students, but that also strengthens the fabric of entire communities. At the department, we're working with states, districts, schools, educators, families, and communities to raise the bar for our support of students so that public education can continue to transform lives. Just like the Learning First Alliance and your member organizations, we're partnering with parents and families to make sure they have a seat at the table in conversations about their children's education. We're making sure every public school and every community is safe and welcoming. We're supporting educators through new pathways to the profession and opportunities for leadership. We're boldly addressing opportunity and achievement gaps and helping provide students with access to evidence-based interventions that can accelerate their learning. We're supporting students' overall well-being. I'm proud the Biden-Harris team is providing resources to states and districts across the country so that they can hire 14,000 more mental health professionals to support our schools. We're also recognizing multilingualism as the superpower that it is. That means helping to recruit more multilingual educators and providing more students with opportunities to speak and learn in multiple languages. We're creating stronger on-ramps to college and careers. Part of that work means reimagining the high school experience, giving students access to hands-on learning opportunities that prepare them for the careers of today and tomorrow. Look, at a time where our country's public schools are under attack by some, where they would rather take public education dollars and turn them into vouchers for private schools, I know we have to step up our efforts. And working together, we can do even more. Our public schools and our students are worth it. Public schools are the heartbeat of our communities. Let's celebrate them this week and every week. Thank you. We're boldly addressing opportunity and achievement gaps and helping provide students with access to evidence-based interventions that can accelerate their learning.
Thank you all so much for your patience as we experienced a little bit of audio difficulty there, but we certainly thank the Secretary for sharing his thoughts with us today. Now let's jump into some conversations. We have an exemplary panel joining us, and I'd like to start by introducing Catherine Bentheim. Kathy brings a wealth of experience from her role as the National Student Support Accelerator Managing Director for the SCALE program at Stanford. With a background in public accounting and management consulting at McKinsey & Company, she has served as the Executive Director of the White House Council for Community Solutions, focusing on empowering disconnected youth. Kathy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Jill, and thank you, Rich Long and the Learning First Alliance for hosting this webinar. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share what great things we are seeing in public education. Now, as Jill mentioned earlier, I am with the National Student Support Accelerator, or what we call NSSA, as there are a lot of accelerators out there. We are a field-building organization, and we're focused on ensuring students in need have access to high-impact tutoring. We do not do the tutoring ourselves, but we conduct and coordinate research, translate that research into practical tools and resources, and provide strategic advising and engagement opportunities to make it easier for folks like you guys to do the real work in the schools for the students. So, as you mentioned, Jill, schools face many challenges, those that existed before the pandemic and now after the pandemic. However, the good news is that while it's not a silver bullet, we know from a very large body of evidence and now experience that high-impact tutoring can go a long way to addressing several of those challenges. While learning acceleration is its primary purpose, high-impact tutoring can also improve engagement in school and support social-emotional well-being because of the strong relationship emphasis. High-impact tutoring, what is it? It has two driving principles. The first is that it develops a close relationship between the student and the tutor that engages and motivates the students. And this is really the secret sauce. And then the second is that it targets students' individual needs with intensive, high-quality instruction that really can accelerate learning. In order to get this great combination of relationship-based personalized instruction, these types of tutoring programs tend to share a few common elements. And so if you look across the effective programs, there are several common elements that I just briefly will mention because I know we got lots to cover. Must be grounded in equity, which means the students who need it have access to it, and that the tutors are trained to lead with equity at the center of their instruction. They must ensure students and their data are safe and protected, and that the program itself is run cohesively, which means that all the pieces of the puzzle work together for the good of the students. So those are the foundational elements. There are also some model-specific elements. The first is the tutor. While lots of people can be great tutors, it's really important for it to be the same tutor each time for that student so that they can develop that motivating relationship. And that tutor also needs to have some initial preparation or training and coaching as they go, which will be different depending on the type of tutor. Certified teacher obviously doesn't need as much as a college student. Instruction needs to be both high dosage, occurring at least 3 times a week, and it should be based on high quality materials. And then there's learning integration. We have seen from the research that tutoring that occurs during the school day is much more effective because it's aligned with the schoolwork, as well as it makes attendance much easier for the students. And finally, the last piece is data. Regardless of the source of data, effective tutoring programs really have to use student progress data to tailor the instruction. So it's intensive, relationship-based, individualized. Not shocking that this would be particularly effective for accelerating learning, but it can be tricky to implement.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing about those. I really liked what you said about relationships being so key and at the center of this. We know how important that is for students to have a relationship with a trusted adult. And this is certainly an opportunity to foster that kind of relationship for students. So, Kathy, what do schools need to do to be able to implement the National Student Support Accelerators recommendations and programs effectively?
Well, that is a great question because it is change and it is a little tricky. But the exciting thing is we are seeing districts and schools taking just a huge number of different innovative approaches and making it work well for students. We actually conducted a 10-district implementation study, and we found 3 key things that that schools really do need, and there are others as well, don't get me wrong, but they need a very clear understanding of what the research tells us drives the effectiveness, just like the elements that I mentioned above. Because as you can imagine, it's understandable that well, if we only did it once a week, we could access more kids, which is true. But the truth of the matter is, to make it effective, you really have to build the relationship, which actually requires multiple times per week. So that's important. It's important for them to understand what's behind the research and why those specific characteristics are important. Schools also need a champion who believes in this work and buy-in from stakeholders. We see this often built in through including stakeholders such as school leaders, educators, parents, etc., in the planning process, as well as making sure to keep those folks really engaged throughout, sharing the wins as they go so that people can cheerlead and support the program. So that's really important. And they also need some administrative capacity to manage the logistics of the program. You can't just hire tutors and hope that it's going to work. Effective programs can be either homegrown within the district or the school themselves, or they can be provided through a partnership with a tutoring provider. But either way, there are some logistics like scheduling the students, allocating the space, ensuring the tutor understands the student's needs. So that capacity is important. So while high impact tutoring is not going to solve all the challenges that we have today, we know that this type of tutoring really can have a profound impact, and we are seeing it across the nation in all kinds of programs in rural areas and urban areas, and doing it through a number of different approaches. And so we're super excited about it, and we're also just really appreciating the strategies that districts are considering as they think about the future and sustaining tutoring over the long run.
Kathy, just a quick question. I'm just curious. Is any of the tutoring done virtually, or is it all in person?
No, we have seen virtual programs that are effective. And of course, I think everyone would prefer to be in person. We do understand that, but there are cases in which, particularly rural areas, sometimes more technical courses that are higher level that you might need to do virtually in order to get enough staff to do it. Because staffing is a challenge. There's no, I'm not going to deny that. Yeah. But yes, virtual can work. And you can find studies on our website that speak to that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing about your program. It is so important to help and support students who need that extra help. Thank you, Kathy.
Oh, thank you.
Well, joining us next is Paul Fleming, the Chief Learning Officer at Learning Forward, who spearheads initiatives in professional learning and leadership. With the background in educational leadership, including his role as Assistant Commissioner for the Teachers and Leaders Division at the Tennessee Department of Education, Paul is instrumental in revising standards and supporting state-level initiatives. Paul, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Jill, and great to be with you and our other panelists and our audience members here to help celebrate Public Education Week and really the foundational importance, as we all know, around public education. So again, really excited, and part of Learning Forward, as you may know and our panelists know, we are the proud owners of the Standards for Professional Learning, recently revised in 2022, to really put forward to the field evidence-based strategies and competencies for all educators, right? And to do that in a way that equips all educators with the skill sets that we have already been hearing about on this webinar for the multitude of challenges that we know our systems, our districts, our schools, and our educators are facing at this time.
So can you talk a little more about how professional learning is helping to address these challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. So, a couple quick examples is we do know that professional learning can equip all educators specifically with some challenges For example, I want to talk about the teacher shortages and retention issue that is facing many of our systems right now. So we know when all educators, and this is exciting to see in systems around the country and globally, certainly, are focused on high quality mentoring and coaching for novice teachers, for example, that has a huge impact on retention. In fact, novice teachers of color are retained at almost 4 times a higher rate when they receive high quality professional learning through coaching and mentoring than teachers who do not. And so we know that while teacher pay and many other factors impact teacher shortages and retention, professional learning is retention, and professional learning does have that ability to impact what we see when systems are facing those shortages. And that is important because it's not just that we know about recruitment, it's how do systems avoid the churn of hiring and then losing teachers, but rather hiring, developing, and retaining along that continuum. And a huge piece of that is providing along that continuum of the educator life cycle, high quality professional learning. So that's one quick example. The other is around, as we know, academic recovery and unfinished learning and how important that is. So again, there's great evidence that we have and other organizations that show when educators, especially classroom teachers and principals, right, are receiving high quality professional learning to address those unfinished learning, there is an acceleration effect on student achievement that they are able to provide almost high dosage, we would say, not just high dosage tutoring, but high dosage instructional strategies to accelerate learning when that professional learning is in place. And that, again, has a huge impact on student learning and also this unfinished learning that we're seeing around the country as well. The other quick piece I would add is there's also a mindset shift that we're seeing occur and we are fortunate to help engage in those conversations with systems around the country around moving from what we would call professional development, one time only, historical sit and get, not personalized, to professional learning. And that shift from PD to PL, as we call it, is really important so that not just the ESSA definition that we help craft for the U.S. Department of Education, but also that systems recognize that just like we talk about personalized learning for students, we need to be thinking about personalized learning for all educators. And that's what high quality professional learning does.
Yeah, just that little change in language from professional development to professional learning, just the shift in concept is so powerful.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Paul, what do schools and school districts, what are the critical elements that they need to succeed in implementing effective professional learning strategies?
Yeah, thank you. And I think I appreciate that question as well, because part of what we are providing in the revised 2022 standards for professional learning that over 30 states, meaning SEAs, have either adopted or adapted, is the roadmap for what you're asking, right? So our standards then, as the roadmap and the foundation, talk about, for example, the importance of leadership at all levels and how leadership, and I know as a former high school principal, I know how important it is to be thinking about the culture in the school, the resources, and investing in our educators, both financially and equipping them with these skills, and how important that is. So that's a piece that certainly is, to answer your question, necessary. The other piece is thinking also around how often do educators have a chance to come together and learn from each other and collaborate? So we have a standard, for example, called Culture of Collaborative Inquiry, because we know that the evidence shows, and this is true certainly globally and in the US, that when teachers have time and space to come together to collaborate around instructional strategies and examine student work, there's a direct impact on student achievement, right? The challenge is over half of all teachers in the United States have never seen a colleague teach. This is not the fault of teachers in any way. This is about the culture and the structure that are in those systems that are not encouraging facilitation and collaboration among educators. And when teachers have the time and space to come together and leaders, there's again a huge impact. So that's another aspect we're trying to capture in the standards that helps address some of the challenges, Jill, that you're asking about.
Yeah, what an amazing idea to observe a colleague down the hall teach, and having the capacity and the time and systems set up so that you can do that, and so that you can come together collaboratively. So it's, again, thinking a little differently about how we do some of this.
Exactly. And the last thing I would just quickly add is we're proud of our 3 new equity standards because we know how important it is to think about, right, on 3 lenses, right? What are the beliefs? What are the actions? And what are the systems that need to be in place so that inequities are both either mitigated or eliminated, and so that every educator has what they need in order for student success for all. But we cannot do that if we're not bold in addressing equity and also addressing historical and current inequities. So we're proud that our 3 equity standards are taking that head on, despite what we know right now is the political rhetoric that often is associated around equity and how important it is to be true to and being bold around what we need and what all educators need right now. Exactly.
Yeah, and what they all need to be able to support all students. So important. Thank you so much, Paul.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Wiyade James, currently serving as the Vice President of Organizational Advancement at AACTE, and she brings a focus on evidence-based interventions in special education leadership. Prior to being at AACTE, Wiyade successfully launched and expanded and oversaw the implementation of an evidence-based pre-K through 3rd grade response to intervention program across 7 school districts in Virginia. Dr. James, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to contribute to the conversation, knowing that public education is the foundation of our democracy. So happy to learn from my colleagues and to share some insights.
Well, and you are in a place that's so important to this process. You know, the colleges of teacher education, we know how important that is in this whole continuum of public education. So in light of these challenges we've talked a bit about today, how are colleges of teacher education adapting to meet these evolving needs?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. So I'm at the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, and at AACTE, we represent the majority of teacher education programs across the nation at schools and colleges of education. And these are programs that are providing comprehensive training to prepare the next generation of educators. We support these institutions in areas of research, policy, practice to advance high-quality preparation of educators. So there are lots of innovation that's happening at teacher education programs. Majority of the candidates that are prepared by these programs are going into public schools. And we know that public schools serve an estimated 49 million children. And this is despite this majority stake that public schools have in educating the preponderance of children nationally. These schools are grappling with a lot of challenges that were noted by the previous panelists before me. One of the challenges that teacher education programs is addressing head on is the shortage of certified educators, which is a result of many factors, including the churn rate of teachers, as well as the low enrollment of candidates in teacher education programs, which is an area that we have direct impact on as an association that represents these preparation programs that are enrolling candidates. There is some exciting news in terms of enrollment trends that I would like to share. So there was a long-term decline in degrees that were conferred in education between the 1970s through 2018, 2019, right before the pandemic. However, when you look at recent statistics, they show that the educator workforce is actually growing in terms of bachelor's degrees that are being conferred in education. It rose to 93,270 degrees conferred in 2021-2022 academic year, which represents a 13% increase from 2018-2019. So while there's a widespread teacher shortage, we are seeing a growing number of college students who are obtaining degrees, bachelor degrees in education, which is good news. So one of the areas that we are working on right now with our member institutions is around the expansion of Grow Your Own programs. So teacher education programs have adopted Grow Your Own models and alternative pathways to address the widespread teacher vacancies in public schools. And these are innovative models that consist of teacher residency programs that combine a full year of paid classroom experience as an apprentice with rigorous academic coursework, as well as para to professional programs that's supporting existing paraprofessionals, school-based paraprofessionals to become fully licensed. Oftentimes, these paraprofessionals receive full tuition waivers and flexible course offerings So our Ed Prep programs are partnering with school districts to launch these grow your own models like the Para to Professional programs and like teacher residency programs. We're also seeing teacher education programs partner with community colleges. So 4-year ed programs are partnering with community colleges to launch 2+2 programs, which will allow teacher candidates to begin their studies at a community college and then transfer through an articulation agreement with a 4-year institution to obtain their bachelor's and become certified. This is very exciting and is actually promising for diversity in the teacher workforce. We know that community colleges serve majority of first-generation college students who are predominantly Black and Brown, so African-American and Latinx students. These students now have an opportunity to transfer from community colleges into those 4-year teacher education degree-seeking programs. So these are just some of the examples that teacher education programs are employing to address one of the biggest challenges that we see, which is the teacher shortage.
I'm wondering, do you have any sense about the reason for the increase in students earning those education degrees?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we are seeing a shift in terms of more students are seeing the importance of the workforce. We know that during the pandemic in particular, teachers were seen as heroes, right? So all of a sudden, children were staying at home and parents were pushing in to really serve the role as a primary educator. And I think that really spoke to a lot of young people in terms of public education being the bedrock of our democracy and wanting to get into the field. So we're seeing more young people. We still need a national public service campaign about public education and the educator workforce, but we're still seeing a lot of young people interested in being a part of this dynamic profession and the ability to make an impact. Being an educator is the only profession that prepares all other professionals for other industries, right? Educators prepare lawyers, doctors, scientists. So we need to really be really intentional about how we elevate teaching and the profession. And I think young people see that as just a promising career and an impactful career.
Oh, love that. So what resources and support are needed and essential for the colleges of teacher education so they can thrive in these efforts?
I think first and foremost, investments. We need investments from federal lawmakers as well as state policymakers through state budgets to grow and diversify our educator workforce and to reduce these shortages. A good example that I like to share is in Michigan. Recently in Michigan with the state funding, the state education agency has expanded the Future Proud Michigan Educator Initiative, which is to support partnerships between PK-12 schools and educator preparation providers to develop pathways for school support staff to earn initial teacher certification or for certified teachers to earn additional endorsements. This is an example of how states can make investments through the legislatures to support teacher education programs and to support the preparation of teachers from the local communities. So Michigan is just one example, and I think there are many states who are now trying to do that through some of the state budgets and also leveraging federal funding to be able to expand the existing efforts around recruitment and preparation.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those interesting statistics and the efforts happening at the Grow Your Own programs. You know, just like we've heard about today already, just, you know, thinking differently, innovation. This is all put us in a place where we're having to think about how we can ensure that our educators have what they need so students can have what they need in perhaps a different way than we've done in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. James. Next, we have Diane Dersch, Chair of the Board of Directors of COSN, the Consortium of School Networks. She is deeply entrenched in the educational technology landscape. With over 34 years of experience in education, including roles as a former teacher and director of technology for the Verizon Innovative Learning Schools program at Digital Promise, Diane brings invaluable insights to the table. She's also president of the Northeast Wisconsin Women in Technology, an organization devoted to attracting, educating, and supporting women in the field of technology. And she also chairs COSIN's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Thank you so much, Diane.
I'm so happy to be here and to celebrate Public Schools Week with you.
Thank you so much. And, you know, technology, just such an important piece of this conversation. And, you know, as you are well aware, the rapid pace of change in education and how tools are being leveraged and tools being utilized by educators and students. You know, how is this taking place? How is it being leveraged by schools and educators to drive improvements in student outcomes?
Well, you know, Jill, when I was a teacher in the 80s and 90s, we had a teacher's manual and a lesson plan, or we wrote a lesson plan, and we were told to teach to the middle. Well, I am so happy that things have moved forward and we've got more resources out there than ever. It allows us to personalize learning so that we can find resources that our learners need and not just, you know, teach toward the middle. So that we've got, you know, students maybe who learn better via video. Well, they can find content. We can help provide content. Maybe we've got students who, you know, need to have visual things and notes and all those resources. We can personalize that learning now due to technology, and the access to resources that our students have is incredible during this time. And so, you know, those tools really help our students get the content that they need in the way that they need it. Another thing is that technology helps with collaboration and communication. You know, that is students who may not raise their hand in the classroom, you know, have maybe another avenue to talk to their peers and talk to their teachers. Parents have another venue in which to contact their school or to learn about what's going on in school via social media and those things. So, you know, collaboration and communication have really been enhanced with technology. Well, as a teacher, again, and a decision maker, we will always say, what is the data telling us? And again, technology and the tools and the systems that we have allow our educators and leaders to have informed decisions because they've got more real-time data available to them now more than ever. And so the analytics that go with it and the ways to project into the future at times are very helpful in, you know, meeting the needs of our students as we move forward. And of course, you know, as a classroom teacher, I always wished I could clone myself, right? Because there are so many things to do. And this isn't new, but flipped classrooms where we can have asynchronous learning taking place, perhaps videoing or, you know, having some sort of ongoing thread in a discussion that can take place asynchronously without everybody being there at the same time can be very helpful. We've learned that students who are learning a new language oftentimes review video to get things that they may have missed. And they can do that, right? They can fast forward things. They can do the things that you can't do with real classroom presentations, live presentations. And so the flipped classroom and asynchronous learning is another thing that really empowers our students. And of course, the last thing is accessibility and inclusion. Oh my goodness, we've heard from all our speakers how equity is so important, and being able to provide modifications for all our students who might be visually impaired or you know, need to get their content in a different way, we can now meet now more than ever. And so our technological tools and innovation have really helped move learning forward.
Have you heard any information from boots on the ground about how AI is being integrated as a tool in some of this work being done?
That has been the conversation for quite a while now, right?
That's what I thought.
Yes, yes. And of course, we're seeing the great things that AI can provide. We're also seeing, the dangers. And so we're working closely with our educational technology leaders to help them understand policy, understand what innovation looks like, and helping people get over the fears of AI. We've been using AI in many different forms for a long time. So how can we take that framework and just expand it a bit without getting too scared about it? So yes, AI does play a big part in all these tools that we are talking about, and we are proceeding with caution.
And I love that you said, to get over the fear, because it has been around a long time, but sometimes I think just within the last couple of years, it's just become such a thing, and it just can seem a little scary. So, but let's see how we can utilize it as a good tool to support the work being done.
You are so right, Jill.
Well, talk to me a little bit about how maybe some of our educational technology can be utilized in our work with communities and community engagement and support. You talked a little bit about communication with families, but how can communities support this school in this in utilizing the technology, and how can we use it as a way for community engagement?
Right. And taking a look at the way our world works now, social media is a grand part of it, right? And so we need to go where our families are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because the pandemic actually taught us that by providing opportunities for virtual meetings can increase parental communication, right? When a family does not have to get a babysitter, to come in for conferences and things like that. There are school districts who actually learned that their conference attendance went up, their parent-teacher conference attendance. So these are great things due to technology. Virtual meetings and webinars, what's going on in school, how can we help our students, and how can we help our community know and understand what's going on in school so that they can be partners in education. There are a lot of great communication tools now out there for schools to communicate with parents and parents to communicate with schools. That has improved throughout the years, and so there's more opportunity for engagement. And, even things like crowdsourcing and getting knowledge and information, finding the experts out there within your community and population so that they can be engaged in your learning community is something that it has accelerated because of technology, right? And those collaborative partnerships and projects, for instance, in a school district where I served as leader, automotive companies sponsored, building automotive bays in high schools, knowing that the students who went through those programs would help feed their population of service providers, right? And so building those partnerships, I think, is so essential, and that innovation provided through technology can really be helpful in building those communities.
Oh, agree completely. Thank you so much, Cindy. Not Cindy, Diane. Cindy is our next panelist, was jumping the gun a little bit. So we next are going to welcome, I was getting excited because it's Cindy Borchett, a school counselor who is a 2024 School Counselor of the Year finalist for my association, the American School Counselor Association. And Cindy, I know your commitment to the well-being and success of your students has left an indelible mark on your school community and beyond. So happy you could join us today, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I am very excited to be part of this conversation because as a school counselor who's actually working with students and staff who are struggling with the struggles and basking in the strengths of our communities, it's wonderful to have input on what we're focusing on and how we're supporting our educators.
Yes, absolutely. And so Cindy, let's talk a little bit about student mental health. You know, we've heard even before the pandemic, we heard about the increase in students' mental health needs, and we know that the pandemic and the subsequent years have the reports and studies are showing an increased concerns around student mental health. And as a school counselor, I know that's something you are working on every day. So talk a little bit about the role of the school counselor and how school counselors are helping to meet that need that students are showing.
Of course. And I would agree that the mental health concerns have always been there. But what the pandemic has done is partnered it with what Mr. Fleming was mentioning in unfinished learning. And so when you pair the idea of mental health being a struggle anyway, and now we have the stress of unfinished learning, our school counselors play a crucial role in being able to help support our students. And when I say play a crucial role, it's the ability for us to truly focus on being school counselors. Sometimes we have an idea in our head, a stereotype of what school counselors have been in the past, where we help you with scheduling and we say good luck, right? But as a school counselor, we are really able to use data and informed decision-making to be able to focus to support our school's attendance, our school's discipline, as well as our school's academics. Because if we get our school's attendance and our school's discipline supported in ways where our students feel successful, their academics are automatically going to feel supported. And not to say that they aren't going to require some work, right? Because when we have unfinished learning, the work that needs to be put in is still very real. But when we're able to use our school counselors to be able to focus on attendance, focus on discipline, and make those connections between that and our academics, the partnerships that bloom are so spectacular. The partnerships between our administrators, our staff, our students themselves, their parents, the community members. And data can be kind of a scary thing when we talk about how do I use data to show how my student is behaviorally changing. That's where this true school counselor comes in, right? Because I can help you look at truancy rates. I can help you look at discipline rates. But beyond that, as a school counselor, I'm trained to be able to help with the things that are creating attendance issues and help build capacity within our staff. And school counselors do a wonderful job at building capacity within teachers as well, because in reality, teachers are the ones who are with students so long during the day, 8 hours a day. And when you have a student who is struggling with their mental health and you have a student who is struggling with their academics, our staff need to have the tools to be able to support them within the classroom. And school counselors are able to support staff as they do that. Especially when we're providing universal SEL curriculums or universal social emotional learning capacities within our staff. So for example, that might look like we talk every day about a skill, a conflict management skill, a growth mindset skill, even all the way up to I'm nervous to come to school, give me a coping skill. Because I would argue since the pandemic, our school avoidance rates are up. They've always been there. That feeling has always been there. But now all of our students need to be able to have a coping skill. We have a shared trauma. And by building that coping skill and that community classroom surrounding mental health and social emotional learning, our school counselors play such a vital role in helping not only our students feel comfortable here, but helping our staff feel comfortable and engaged in their classroom communities. Because if you think about it, all of that combined together can feel insurmountable. And our school counselors are able to provide the resources and the support to make that not insurmountable.
So, Cindy, what do school counselors need to be able to do this work?
I would argue that every student deserves a school counselor, right? And so as we start looking at the number of school counselors to the number of students we have in this nation, there is a very heavy disconnect. So as we look at our caseloads, being able to provide the capacity to have 250 students to one school counselor can be very beneficial, because then every student does have access to their school counselor. I would also say stigma reduction is valuable. It's invaluable, really. And when stigma reduction truly happens, it's when we have the support of folks being willing to not only support our programming, but being willing to engage in the crucial conversations and the difficult conversations around some of our programming to ensure we do have access to our students. Because I'm finding, as I move forward in my career and as I'm supporting the systemic change within my district and my surrounding districts, that it's all based in fear. We're afraid that our students are going to fail, and we don't know what to do to help support our student. So we're afraid of what we don't know. So if we are able to have those crucial conversations and understand that everyone is coming at this with the best interest of their child, we're able to support this type of programming, because it's not a parenting fail that your child is school avoidant. They're overwhelmed. So let's have that crucial conversation between you and me and my administrator. And if we are willing to reduce that stigma and allow access to our school counselors, our academic gaps will certainly decline.
Yeah, and that's, one of the things school counselors are great at, as you said, looking at that school data and then identifying gaps, resource, opportunity, attainment, all the gaps, and then designing a school counseling program for the year that helps meet those needs and address those gaps.
I agree. And the power that comes from that is the ability to see the system for what it is. And when we are working with our students that have the highest needs, we're able to identify those spaces in the systems that need support as well. So we're ensuring all of our students have equitable access to our programming, and that we're not falling into the trap of tradition. And we've always done it the way that we've done it. But now we are able to include everyone in the successes that come from that tradition.
Oh, thank you so much, Cindy. Appreciate you and the work you do.
Thank you.
Next, we have joining us April Knight, an esteemed educator and leader in the field of elementary education. April currently serves as the Vice President of the National Association of Elementary School Principals and as a principal of Avondale Elementary School in Columbus, Ohio. She has been a principal for 20 years and in education for 33 years. With a passion for fostering academic excellence and creating a supportive learning environment, April brings extensive experience and dedication at both the national and the local levels. Welcome, April.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. The panelists are amazing, and I think you're going to find that there are some true threads between all of the comments that we're sharing.
Absolutely. Well, love to hear from you. I mean, you're a principal and you're also a leader at the National Association of Elementary School Principals. So you have, I would think, a very unique perspective on elementary education in the country right now. So tell us about a strategy you have found effective in promoting student success and fostering a positive school culture, particularly at your elementary school.
Well, I think what I have learned over the course of my 33 years is that at the forefront of everything, there has to be positive relationships. And so from the time that I start in a building, I am working to establish those relationships, establishing trust with staff and with students and with families. Basically, everybody wants to be cared for, and they want to know that somebody will listen to them and support them. And it's a matter of being able to listen to understand, as opposed to listening to formulate your response. And so that's really important, even to young children. They want to know that you are going to listen to them. So for us, at our building, we work really hard to ensure that our students understand our 3 Bs, be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. And we talk a lot about what that means and the importance in all of that in helping them grow as leaders and to grow as community members. But for me, it's very important. The best part of my day is actually greeting the students and staff every morning. And that's the best part, because that's when the students are coming in, they're excited, they want to share. If you see the student that maybe is a little sad or tired, that's an opportunity for myself or my counselor to step in and chat with the child and let them know it's okay. We'll help them, whatever they need. And the parents and the families appreciate that greatly, because they know that it's a challenge sometimes for some of our students to get up and get going, or dealing with things that might be happening in the neighborhood, or social media impacting how they're feeling with their friends and things. So we work very hard to make sure that the start of the day is the best part of the day. And that just all is a part of building those relationships.
And, it's just such a small thing, being out and visible to students as they come in. But you're right, it sets the tone for the day. And that's amazing. I'm sure those students and families appreciate seeing you, understand how important that is. So what advice would you give to a principal about who may need some assistance in promoting that positive school culture and environment? What are some of the critical pieces that need to be thought of by the school building leader to ensure that happens?
So I think first and foremost is that a leader needs to be able to be themselves. They have to know who they are as a person, as a professional, and they have to be comfortable with that. From there, I think understanding the school community is very, very important. So when I first started as an administrator, I had surveys that I conducted with families, with the community members, with students, and with staff, wanting to know what are things that are important to them. And then based on their previous experiences, what are things that they think have been successful that they want to continue? What are some things that maybe need to be adjusted a little bit? Or what are some things to stop? What are some things to start? It's important for people to feel that they have some say in their community. And as a school, that's really important that we are recognizing that. I would also suggest, again, spending time with the students at arrival, in the classrooms, recess time, lunchtime, dismissal. Students are always willing to talk, and you find out a lot of information and understand some of the needs that are happening with the students and their families as a result of those conversations, and always be looking to find ways to support them. We work really hard to make sure our students and families have what they need as far as food, clothing, and shelter goes. Anything else that we can provide, we are looking for ways to do so. And I think that's one of the things that just contributes to that positive culture that we have here, is that our families know that we're going to do what we can to support them.
And we know that students can't learn if they have mental health concerns, or are hungry, or not sure where they're going to sleep that night. And so I think that just highlights the importance of those community collaborations that you shared about and that we've heard about today, because it's not just about the school day. Schools are the hub of communities, and you've got to have those relationships so you can provide the resources, find the resources, see how you can support those students and families.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, April. Appreciate your sharing about your experience. Appreciate having you. Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Yvonne Johnson, the 58th president of the National PTA. She is leading the charge in strengthening the vital partnership between families and schools. With a rich history of involvement in the PTA spanning nearly 3 decades, including roles as National PTA President-elect, Vice President of Advocacy, and Chair of significant committees, Yvonne is a staunch advocate for parental engagement, and her dedication to advocacy is reflected in her personal motto, never underestimate the power of a parent's voice. And yes, I absolutely believe that as well. And thank you, Yvonne, so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jill, for having me here today.
So yeah, the parent piece, as we've talked about all these components of a school, and we've heard lots about engaging with parents and families and how critical that is into students' learning and education. So I appreciate all that you and National PTA do in this work. So as schools are undergoing these rapid transformations that we've talked about and embracing innovations, how can we ensure that the voices of parents and caregivers are part of these discussions and part of the decision making?
Thank you so much for the question. So it is actually very critical that parents and caregivers have a seat at the table whenever decisions are made that might impact their children. Parents and caregivers provide critical perspectives on their children and education, and we can't make every child's potential reality without families at the decision-making table. Decades of research shows families are essential partners to schools and in their children's success in education. At PTA, we see firsthand how powerful it is when parents, caregivers, educators, administrators, community leaders, decision makers all come together in a meaningful way to do what's best for kids.
So what are you hearing from your vantage point at National PTA about some of the primary challenges that the parents and caregivers and that they're perceiving as most significant in their students' lives today as part of the educational landscape?
I really believe that we are in an urgent time for families and schools, and it's so important to build those strong partnerships so that they can support their students' success. And we have to do a better job as schools of reaching out to our families to engage them so that they do have a positive impact on their students' success. Of course, when we work together, everybody wins. National PTA encourages the implementation of our national standards for family school partnerships, which we just recently updated, and we have 6 tenets. They are welcoming all families, communicating effectively, supporting student success, speaking up for every child, sharing power, and collaborating with the community. And we really want our standards to be used as a tool and a resource for policymakers, school districts, administrators, and educators so that we could all prioritize family engagement at all levels. I think families are facing all kinds of things today, and it's really important to have that family-school partnership where decisions are being made, collaboratively rather than a top-down sort of approach, which we have seen in the past.
So how do we make that happen? Is it just the invitation to come to the table, or what are you seeing as some things that schools or districts are doing really effectively to make that happen?
Well, I will say it's definitely not just inviting. I think, yes, the families, they might ask to come in, but I think it's important that when a family comes into a school, that they feel welcomed, that they feel, you might have, schools have to think a little differently. We might have to meet the family where they live or go into their communities. It's not just about expecting them to come to the school and, automatically feel, that they're being valued. So it's important for it to be like sort of two-way communication where I'll give an example. I live in Delaware, and several years ago, there was a principal who really wanted to increase his family engagement. And so what he would do, he had a lot of students that came from an urban area into a suburban area. So they were bused in from pretty far, like 20, 25 miles. And what he did was he went into the community. He would set up like a PTA meeting or a parent meeting with the families in the community. He would use community centers. He would go to restaurants and, and feed the families. And it really increased the engagement in that school. And they also felt very valued. I think when we show families that we value their opinion and what they have to say, that goes a long way to opening up the communication between the educator and the family and the school and the family. And so those are really best practices of what we can do. Instead of expecting parents to just come in and show up, it's really everybody's responsibility. It's not just a one size fits all.
And that's such a great example of again, doing things differently. We heard earlier about utilizing technology as a way for communication with families. So they're not barriers of time nor transportation or childcare or whatever it might be, but really viewing it as a partnership, because, at the end of the day, we all want what's good for students. We want them to be successful. So I think that collaboration with those families is so critical.
And also parents are, to believe it or not, and I think you probably already know this, but the number one thing parents are concerned about is that their kids are safe in school.
Right.
Like with the landscape of what is going on with school violence and bullying, parents are very concerned. And some research shows 6 in 10 parents reported that they worry a lot about school violence, and their largest concern is, are their children going to be safe when they send them off to school? And as you can imagine, when they're younger, that's even, any parent is going to worry. It's overwhelming how frightened parents are about their kids' school. They want them to learn, and that's very important that they get the educational supports, but they also want to make sure that their kids are safe. And we want to create a safe environment. And that's actually part of our public policy platform, is to have safe and supportive schools.
Yep. And that's, again, what we all want, I think, for our students. Oh, Yvonne, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about the increasingly critical importance of parents and family engagement with schools. So now we're going to bring back everybody, and we have just a few questions for the entire group. Not everyone needs to answer each question, but just want to hear some thoughts, and especially as you've reflected on the conversations over the last hour. And, one of the things we've talked about is just significant changes, rapid changes, innovations, doing things a little differently. Wondering if a couple of you could talk about and share your insights about how schools and communities are adapting and managing these shifts effectively.
I'll jump in. Well, I think one example that we've seen across several states is the use of the ESSER dollars, so the Elementary and Secondary Education Relief Pandemic Funds. I think many districts have put to use those funds. I believe they have until September 30th to spend the ESSER dollars to put towards addressing some of the challenges that we're talking about around student mental health, around teacher shortages, investing in incentives for teachers or recruitment approaches and efforts. So that's one way that districts and states have been navigating that, is leveraging federal funds that came through pandemic efforts. And I think this underscores the importance of the federal role in addressing some of these challenges. Although education is a state and local issue, we still need investments through, teach grants for teacher candidates to pursue degrees. We need teacher quality partnerships funding for school districts to partner with higher ed. So there's a big role that the federal government can play here. And I'm glad that Secretary Cardona provided some welcome remarks. So hopefully these challenges will continue to be on his radar. Thank you.
And if I could add to Dr. James, I just really, it's making me think for this last hour, and especially what Cindy added, I really appreciate that, and congrats on your nomination, that we need a systems approach, right? We can't afford to continue to have just pockets of excellence.
Yep.
And Cindy, as you were talking, that really came loud and clear, right? That as you were saying about, how counselors need to be trained about the root causes to help students experience success is very different than a guidance approach, right? The guidance school approach. And Dr. James, you were saying that too, right? It's like, what are those innovative partnerships with teacher and leader preparation programs to do that? All of this, we would argue, I think, and agree that it needs a systems approach rather than like a program approach or something piecemeal. including federal, state, and local. And it's exciting to see places, even as April, you're mentioning, Columbus is a district that's working on principal pipelines, for example, with an equity focus, with the Walls Foundation and Learning Forward as a really powerful example of building capacity for both current and aspiring leaders, because we know how much the impact of a good school leader plays in that school community. And then likewise, an example like Long Beach in California that is really embedded into the DNA of their district, everything we've been talking about today. In terms of making it not just a superintendent's responsibility, right, or a teacher's responsibility, but everybody having a common shared understanding about the direction where they want to go, and then how professional learning can maximize that for all educators to impact all students. So just been inspiring an hour for me, and thanks on that piece.
Well, thank you so
And
much.
just, if you don't mind, if I can just build on that, because definitely thinking about the federal role that you were talking about, Dr. James, as well as the systems approach is both super important. And to add to that is what we're seeing a lot is community partnership also. And so one of the exciting innovations we've seen is higher education institutions partnering with K-12 districts to provide high impact tutoring for students. And what that does is provides the district with a renewable source of tutors. It provides the college students with an early experience to education as a career, which can build the educator pipeline. And then it also, we've seen the ability to have the students get paid through work study. And so there is the federal role. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there was a letter that came out encouraging higher education institutions to up their percentage from 7 to 15% of funding work study folks to work in the community. So the federal role is big in this area. And then the systems approach also really is helpful to see how the educator pipeline system as well as the K-12 district system can work together to support all students. So anyway, that's my exciting innovation, and I will thank you all for the great conversation today.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else want to jump in on that one? Well, let's move on then. So given the emphasis on the necessity of resources, whether it's human capital resources or dollars, what are some of the obstacles schools are facing in gathering and utilizing these resources? And again, what have you heard about exemplars about what schools or districts have done to really ensure that they have all of these pieces in place to do this work?
If you don't mind, I would love to start on that one. Because as we look at our resources, the ESSER funding has been so wonderful and has been such a gift. The grant funding has been so wonderful and such a gift. And we have these students for 12 to 13 years. And so as we're doing our long range planning, as we're gathering resources and we're building the development and the depth that we need for the systems to be successful, but also be able to be maneuverable enough to meet the needs of our communities, we need to be able to anticipate what the funding and the support is going to look like. And so while we are currently addressing the mental health crisis, and one that is very, very real, we need to make sure that we don't forget about it as we move on, because we're finding I think the side effect of what we're seeing is that the mental health of our students were there, but since it wasn't in the forefront, we kind of just let it ride. And now that we have a crisis that we are partnering it with, it's a reminder that that is always there and it's always important. And the mental health of our students is the bedrock of their ability to succeed at school. And when we talk about the successes as we're building our communities, when it is truly a systems approach, and we really need to be focused on our systems. And we have been finding true success in the ability to engage our community and build our community into our systems, because the schools are the hearts of our communities. And I think that is why sometimes schools are the default for things that need to happen within our communities, because we see all of our community. And we forget that we need to be engaging our community members to be able to make the things that need to happen. So for example, in my little community, when I was growing up, we had Boys and Girls Club, we had 4-H, we had a plethora of other support systems that could support the school as we were working to meet the needs of our students. A lot of that has shifted, and now we're just looking at the school. So as we get creative on how we are pulling together our resources and how we're building our systems, when we have the foundation of the consistent, anticipatable funding and support, we also need to make sure that we're having the view of how are we making sure we're supporting all of those other things that help us get our work done too. We aren't functioning within the silos of our own systems.
Anyone
and Jill,
else?
we're hearing from this team, it's an all hands on deck approach, right? Everybody needs to be involved with this. And so as we talk about systems and integration, you know, making sure that we are also keeping track of the data to show the efficacy of the work that we are doing is also important, because when the time comes, when funding ends or when things, you know, resources dry up, we need to be able to say, here is what we have done, and here are the changes that have taken place because of this. And so as we think about the barriers and obstacles, one thing that we can do as innovators and leaders looking toward the future is develop a robust data system that's going to be able to help to tell the story. And I know we're talking about student mental health here, and I know we're talking about things that typically you can't measure, right? But we can measure the impacts of student mental health as it improves, right? And so that's something that I think through this conversation, I've always said as a technologist, robust data systems are going to help us tell the story. And I believe that that's something that can help here as well.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
And I thank you so much for bringing up the data, Diane, because I think sometimes we forget that we speak our own language, and data allows us to be able to engage our community partners and our parents in a way where they feel like they're valued and where they do feel like that they get to have a solid voice, because we're not talking in a way that they're not engaging in. So thank you for pointing that out.
And I would agree just that the importance of measuring for impact, and we know impact is multidimensional, as you were mentioning, Diane, but it's so important for systems, especially Title funds, Title II, Title I, all title funds at the federal level, to show, and ESSER dollars to show and be intentional about measuring for impact, and to have those kind of robust data systems to really also drive sustainability once this funding is ending in the next year. So thank you for mentioning that.
And I'd just like to add that when ESSER dollars became available, it was such an exciting time, because it was like somebody's recognizing that we need support and we need resources. And as ESSER funding is closing now, just as Paul had mentioned and Diane had mentioned, that data that we have collected over time with the inclusion of all the different means of utilizing the ESSER funding, I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that the impact of that data is going to show that there still is need. And that's something that NAESP, as well as I know many other organizations, are all working to impress upon that need. It continues.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing your thoughts. I'm so incredibly impressed with everything you're doing. I know the title of this webinar was about challenges, but I'm leaving this conversation actually incredibly hopeful. And some of the words I wrote down that were brought up time and time again about equity, positive relationships, partnerships, innovation, collaboration, and then all of that through the lens of systems work and systems change and non-siloed work. during the pandemic, you know, the motto, we're all in this together, but we are. It is all hands on deck. So thank you for sharing. It's so heartening to hear about all the wonderful things taking place. I know we are all here today because we believe in the power of public schools. So thank you for your support of public schools and for what you do each and every day on behalf of our nation's students. And thank you all for joining us today.